We've got this tweet from Colin Rugg. He says, Alec Baldwin declares the U.S. is in a pre-Civil War culture. I'm going to pause right away. Alec Baldwin made a very calm statement on social media. Conservatives are insulting and deriding him. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You can rag on the guy for his attitude. You can rag on him for being a hothead, for his politics. But to say that he declares something, he says, I watched a show and they said that we were in pre-Civil War culture. And I kind of think that's the case. And then you've got the actor took a break from being bossed around by his wife. I get it. You don't like the guy, but we can listen to what people we disagree with have to say. Here's what he said.
Led my hand to pick up the remote and turn on my television. Sorry. And watch Ken Burns' famous miniseries. And boy, you can see now that we are in a pre-Civil War culture now. When they describe things back then politically, there were profound differences, of course, in terms of just history and age and, you know, what life was like back then, and cotton and slavery and Lincoln and Robert E. Lee and so forth. There's just so many, this incredible story. Awful that this country had to go through that. Awful. But as a story, it's just overwhelmingly powerful and fascinating. But I look at the politics of it, of where people are in this country today, in the division and how they're holding fast, and no one's going to falter. No one's going to break or compromise. And it's bad.
He's not wrong. He said, I watched a series. I saw what it was like in the Civil War. We're in a pre-Civil War culture. Both sides are dug in. Neither is going to back down. The fact that the response to him saying something that is just a blanket statement about the current culture war is met with tribal derision, I think exemplifies exactly what he's saying. Yeah. But what he's actually trying to say is we're in a period called civil strife. One that I did not make this up, though I talk about it quite a bit. I'm curious. You mentioned that you've polled on this issue of civil war. What are you seeing?
This is what separates us, because we just don't do the election horse races. We're actually concerned about like the future of America and how people think, because the Overton window moves all over the place on all kinds of topics, and it's been weaponized, especially with all these info ops. So the net effect of the Biden administration was to take the question, how likely is it that we'll see a civil war in the next few years, from low 30s up to the highest number that we ever saw was 43%. So that's a pretty big number.
So during the Biden years. Before Biden, it was in the 30s.
Yep.
And after Biden, it was in the 40s.
43%.
43.
I couldn't find the 43% number. This one was like from April of last year. 16% very likely, 25% somewhat. Only 20% say not at all likely. And I mean, the Republicans are a majority say, 54%. So, you know.
There was this poll that was done for each region. There was the northeastern region, the south, the southwest. There was the Midwest, and there was the Pacific Northwest. They polled each region and by political alignment whether they wanted their region to secede to form its own country. And it was hilarious. In the Northeast, Democrats overwhelmingly said we should secede. In the South, Republicans overwhelmingly said we should secede. In the West, Pacific Northwest and West, Democrats overwhelmingly said we should secede. The only place that was independent and wanted secession was the Midwest. But it's fascinating where we are with AI these days, because what I did was I actually polled all of the numbers for each region, then normalized for population, and created a nationwide breakdown of should our region in general secede from the rest of the country. And the sentiment was something like 2-1.
Yes.
Most people in this country believe that their region should be independent from the rest of the country. You see things like that, which are not so much about civil war, but about self-determination. You see efforts to secede in general or break away from their states. You see the ongoing conflict. And then it's fascinating to me that somebody would look at what Alec Baldwin is saying and call him a moron.
They're literally bleeding Kansas right now in Tesla dealerships. They're bleeding Tesla. Like, this is how the Confederacy behaved. Well,
it wasn't the Confederacy. The bleeding Kansas, John Brown was an abolitionist. He brought his children to Kansas to murder people. And he's a hero. Abraham Lincoln arrested the Maryland legislature that was sympathetic to the Confederacy, arrested journalists, threatened to arrest a sitting Supreme Court justice, and created suspension of habeas corpus between Pennsylvania and D.C. He's a hero.
John Brown was probably crazy.
Who was?
John Brown was probably crazy.
He was absolutely
We were
crazy.
told he was a hero growing up, too.
Listen, this guy was so dumb. Look, I can sympathize with abolitionism, but this guy took over the Harper's Ferry Armory, and when a train pulled through, he was like, they can go, they're fine. And what happened? The train then went and said, help, call the feds. They've taken over an armory.
Yeah.
He would have succeeded in the seizure of the armory if he did not let the train leave.
That's what people,
He's a moron.
sometimes don't understand about like modern war and how things can escalate. If you don't go all the way, you die.
Here's a fun one.
Modern war. And that is the horror of domestic violence.
Here's a fun one. West Virginia should not exist. West Virginia was a part of Virginia. When the Civil War happened, Virginia conscripted and called to combat young men. The voting age males left the region that was now West Virginia to go fight. Once they were away, the remaining people who weren't fighting said, should we vote to secede and join the Union? Yeah, let's do it. So these people who were called to fight in a war.
That's beautiful.
And look, I think it's around 3 to 5% of the South were slave owners. Mm-hmm. So these are people who were just called up by their state for active duty. They came home to find they were no longer part of their home state anymore. It's absolutely wild, the things that went down in the Civil War.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the Supreme Court ultimately said to Virginia after the war, screw you, West Virginia's gone.
What's crazy is how much the calculus has just changed in a year, right? Because you almost feel like if it had happened a few years ago, it would have been like a straw breaks the camel's back, MAGA flips out, there's some kind of violent protest, and then the police state cracks down on it, and then it pops off. Mm-hmm. But here it's like pretty easy to say that the military and police would side with Trump. Like, very easy to say. And so it would not get very far.
I disagree. And when you look at the history of the Civil War in the United States, nobody thought the war could happen, largely because they were like, you mean all of these generals from each of these states that were all trained at West Point together and are friends with each other are going to fight? That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. And then what happened? Yep. And it was, I can't remember which general it was, but the Virginia general.
Lee? Robert E. Lee?
Was he?
He's Virginia. Yeah, he was the Virginia guy, I believe.
Well, I believe it might have been him. Or it might have been Stonewall.
Jackson. Stonewall Jackson?
Might have been.
That guy was...
But they basically wrote, I am now torn between standing with my friends
that was Robert E. Lee.
And my country,
I believe, yeah,
or my home.
Yep, that's
and
Robert
I have
E.
no
Lee.
choice but to go to my home.
I don't know if
so you've got a cop in California, and he gets paid by the California government. Sure, Trump can say we're going to seize your resources. California says no, you're not. And this cop is being told by the man standing in front of him. I don't think people understand how this stuff happens. Let's just entertain this concept. Donald Trump's in D.C. You are in California. You're a cop in San Francisco. Trump announces on the TV, police must side with him. He's seizing control. Trump's not here. Your boss says, nah, we're not listening to that. We are not going to allow Trump or any of his people to come anywhere near this state. We are a sovereign state. We have a right to defend ourselves. They have no constitutional authority here. What is that cop going to do? He's going to say, look, when I watch police officers arrest innocent people, seize guns from innocent people, and they go, I'm just doing my job, and conservatives defend it, the idea that Donald Trump would decree and police would side with him is laughable to me.
I think that's right. I think there's a lot of questions about whether the principle, and you'd never know until you know like what kicks it off. But if there's a rebuttal to that, and I'm not saying it is because I have no idea how this would play out, is that I think states matter less. People move more. People aren't landowners like they were back then. People change jobs all the time. And also in the polling, what I noticed is that your state doesn't really friggin' matter that much, except for just how left or right you are. Like if I polled Wisconsin this cycle, I was seeing almost as high levels of concern about the border as I was in like Arizona and Nevada.
Really?
So it doesn't matter that much, except for literally the sliding scale of Kamala Harris and Trump. Problem is, all of those blue voters are in cities that need supply chains.
So-
that need, yeah.
So let's imagine police in the big cities and surrounding suburbs, and a conflict breaks out. Not a civil war, but there's a conflict. Maybe Texas, when they were securing their border against Joe Biden, maybe we see something like that. Maybe we see California completely opens up. They tear all the wall down.
Here's one. The feds go in to arrest Phil Murphy for harboring a illegal alien.
Indeed. And the police in New Jersey will not side with Trump.
New Jersey is now a swing state. It
Won't happen. Because in South Jersey, maybe
when the National Guard comes.
What would happen is the National Guard would show up and the police would likely say, as a matter of law, the Insurrection Act, we don't intervene in this regard in these matters. They won't work with Trump. Let's say let's escalate this. Let's do the scenario of that's an interesting one. I'm not entirely sure how it would play out. Trump going into a deep blue state next to New York. Who would intervene on the behalf of Phil Murphy? Because he did mention that he had an illegal immigrant in his house. The example that I like to use is Colorado and Oklahoma, using abortion as a comparable pretext to war, like slavery was. We're dealing with a question of personhood. Democrats once again are on the side against personhood. Republicans on the side of personhood. Colorado has completely unfettered abortion. Oklahoma has totally banned abortion. You enter a scenario where you get an underground railroad, the Democrats call it, of women escaping Oklahoma to get abortions. Oklahoma says this is a crime. I can't remember which state it was. We went over this when it happened, but the governor of a southern state, a woman fled the state to get an abortion, and he said that's a criminal conspiracy. So you fleeing a state with others and being aided to go do it is a criminal conspiracy. So let's say conflict breaks out at the border between Oklahoma and Colorado. There's a man who is with a woman. She's 7 months pregnant. The baby is viable. She says one night, you know what? I've decided I can't be with this man. It's a bad relationship. He's abusive, emotionally abusive or something. Yep. She gets up at 2 a.m., packs her bags, and she flees. The guy wakes up a few hours later and he looks around. He's like, where's my girlfriend with my baby? Where's my wife? He finds out through a mutual friend, she's on her way to Colorado to abort your child at 7 months. This is at the point where he's already seen the ultrasound and he's freaking out. One of the leading reasons given by women for abortion is bad relationships. This is true. So this is a potential scenario. She gets to Colorado. He calls his friends crying, please help me. She's going to kill my son. They drive to Colorado. Colorado police block them and say, you're not going anywhere near this woman. We know what your intentions are. Oklahoma's now at the border. The woman is right there or she's rushing towards the border. It's a crazy scenario, but how does this play out if a woman were to do this? If this does come to a point where there is a conflict and Oklahoma says she is breaking the law, kidnapping this child, Colorado says, no, she's not. It's an unborn fetus. It's not even alive. The police 100% would be on the side of the woman. Oklahoma would 100% be on the side of the man. The federal government could try to intervene. And then Colorado is going to claim that Trump is trying to overrule the state's sovereign laws, violating the 9th and 10th Amendment. Yeah. I don't know how likely that is. I'm just saying. If you entertain a scenario where it comes down to a conflict between the federal government and the state, where they actively need to oppose each other, the state is going to side with the state and the federal government with the federal government. The simple reason is that a guy may be a conservative Trump supporter, MAGA cop. But when they say you will defy Donald Trump and follow the orders of your department, he's going to look around at every house and say, it's 90% Democrat. Either I flee the state with my family right now and I'm homeless and I beg Trump for help, or I just do as I'm told and do my job for my state.
Well, what I can say is you should probably ask ChatGPT to make that into a movie script because it would have been a better Civil War movie than the one that they put out. But
I know.
Yeah. But I don't, you never know the context. Like, what if it's exposure between the cops and the feds, like the FBI? I really don't know. But like there's probably people doing that right now. There was that whole situation with the divorced father and the mother was trying to trans a kid. I don't know how that played out, but it's like a context of tension, a constitutional crisis or something that sparks it off. And then it just comes down to the details. And I don't know, but
I think that one of the mistakes we often make is that we compare now to the U.S. Civil War, which was distinct. There was a strong moral issue and a question of personhood between sovereign independent states under a weak government. People said the United States it was not a singular government. The federal government was very weak. Today, we are dealing with something more akin to like the Bolsheviks or the Spanish Civil War, where you have ideological factions that are amassing in rural and urban centers.
Or even like the Chilean Civil War, would you call it that, with Salvador Allende, where they came in and they just in one afternoon flew bombers over the Capitol. They went in, they said, hey, he killed himself. The new ruler's in charge now. They put in Pinochet, and Civil War over. Happened in like 7 hours.
Well, that's called a revolution.
It was a revolution. And I think we're in the midst of a global revolution. It's technological, it's banking, and they're trying. They would love to see the U.S. fall into civil war and destroy itself, because we're the biggest bulwark against global totalitarian technocracy.
So I think that you're onto something. There are elements of the left people on the left that have the ideology that any populist or any right-leaning people can not be in positions of power. You're seeing it in France, Italy. Le Pen they figured out a way to put Le Pen in jail for a couple years. There's a guy in Romania, I guess, that was a populist. There's a lot of right-leaning populist type politicians that the left is just breaking the law and throwing them in jail. But what will happen is when the population realizes that their democracy is a sham, they will side with the autocrats. They will side with the people that are the authoritarians if they can have a reliable system.
Yeah, this ties into what you're saying about the fourth turning, that after order decreases, people will just seek the strong man. You didn't say strong man, I'm saying that, but seek order.
Yeah.
In whatever form that may be at the moment. And if that's like harsh government overreach.
I'll have to figure out a way to ask that question. I'm actually really interested in what the results would be. But it's like a vacuum of leadership that is filled by a new generation of leaders that have different value sets than the existing ones. And they reorganize society around a shared cultural vision. That's what the fourth turning tells us we're going to see in the next 5 or 10 years. And it'll be a major change that puts 9/11 basically to shame, because everybody like actually liked George W. Bush. That's a really big feat. It's like 80% approval ratings or whatever. And, you know, the whole thing with the freedom fries, like society was reorganized with a shared cultural vision. It didn't last because none of the values, none of the institutions like got changed. But that's theoretically what we're in for.
Cultural cohesion doesn't typically lead to civil war. If every single person in this country was watching the same TV show, there'd be a little conflict. Their worldviews would be similar. If every single person was influenced by only a couple of news channels, and the news channels kept complaining about government spending, Doge would be a celebration.
Yep.
But you have bifurcated culture in this country, and there's two parent factions and then subsets within all of them. So you've got libertarians somewhat aligned with the conservatives and post-liberals and whatever. And then on the left, you've got the progressives, the socialists, the communists, and the Democrats. Overwhelmingly, these are two distinct spheres of influence. Neither will back down. I think if you do a fair assessment, what you'd find is the Democrat side is authoritarian cult-based. Their worldview is adhere to the authority or else. This makes society function. They're not wrong. They're just crazy, and their worldview is nonsense. On the right, it's more meritocratic, decentralized, do your thing, with a faction that has a strongman. And the reason why the right is only just now turning things around is on the right, people have finally decided to wield power. So typically what you ended up seeing with Trump's early coalition was people like me and Carl Benjamin, who are classical liberals, who are like, no, we can't do those things. We must maintain order. And then after getting beaten in the face over and over again by people willing to break the law and violate the Constitution, we went, wow, you can't actually exist in a society where people don't follow the law, and their law enforcement will not follow the law. A lot of people bring up, how is it so easy to arrest Trump's lawyers, yet Adam Schiff and these FBI agents, these intel guys who lied, we can't get a single indictment of these people?
Yep.
Because they are willing to violate the Constitution, and the right typically is not. Maybe Trump right now will realize his time is short, and he's looking at being a lame duck president for 2 years of his term if the Democrats win in 2026. And maybe he just says, like he's already been doing, let's go nuclear, issue indictments, arrest these people. I'll tell you this, Trump's got to do it right now.
Yeah, clock's ticking.
If Donald Trump waits a year to issue indictments, it will negatively impact him in the election. If he does it right now, this year will not even be, no one will remember it. There's going to be no, if Trump next month says criminal indictment for Adam Schiff, witness tampering, lying, there was something that came out with Ratcliffe today that I'm blanking on, but a specific reference about him being a fact witness to the case and there being some potential implications there. If he went after Liz Cheney for witness tampering or Anthony Fauci for lying to Congress, he has to do it now. Because if he does it close to the midterms, there will be an endless campaign commercial of Trump retaliating as a fascist and arresting people to stop them from being influential or winning. If he does it now, next year people are going to go, oh yeah, when was that?
No, you're right. He came in with shock and awe, the days of thunder, whatever you want to call it, and it was effective. Now, I'll tell you, I don't think it changed his approval rating that much. Like, it was just flat at like 52. It went up to 56 once. But what it did do was completely take all the power away from the left. Like, they had no idea what to do. Chuck Schumer was out there virtue signaling. People tore his head off on Twitter. And so he has so much power right now. And I don't even mean to do anything autocratic, but he's sitting on a massive set of information that he knows about the stuff they uncovered in the government. Socialize it. Put it on TV. Don't just do one press release. Make it part of the zeitgeist. And he could do that. You know, you don't have to throw garbage cases out there, like string them out. But they have enough on somebody. And there are people, I'm sure, that have already flipped. Get it out there. Get the information out there. Just control
Doge Transparency Day. Once a week, they publish information on malfeasance.
I want them to make the Doge Prentice. I want to have Doge featured on linear television. They should negotiate with CBS to take over 60 Minutes slot, a highly produced show where Trump fires, 10,000 people out of the, whatever it is this week. But like something like that, because people are following this. Doge was more popular than Trump was. It was plus 11 net. And we asked, how angry are you with the level of waste, fraud, and abuse in the government that they've seen so far? 70%.
Doge was more popular than Trump? That's interesting, because I thought Musk was polling so far underwater. So that's
Musk,
crazy distinction.
Well, first off, other people do okay with the elections, but I'm pretty sure you can only trust my favorability numbers. Everybody else has a sandbag Trump. So they'll show like a Trump 44% favorability rating and then put a poll out that it has him polling at 50. Doesn't make sense. But we had Trump. When Trump was 53, Doge was 55, net 11. Trump was like net 10. Elon was net 9, but then Elon's dropping. He went from like 52 down to, I think, 45 in the last poll. So that's the difference between Teflon Don, is that, stuff doesn't just slide right off Elon. It's starting to take a toll.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.